Hello children, welcome back to the class. In this video, we are going to discuss about heterotropic nutrition. What do you mean by heterotropic nutrition? What do you mean by hetero? As I already told you, the meaning of hetero is depend. So, there are certain living organisms which will depend on other organisms for their food directly or indirectly. So, how do you call the organisms that are undergoing heterotropic nutrition as? Very good. So we call it as heterotrophs or consumers. So under heterotropic nutrition, we have few forms like parasitic, saprophytic, symbiotic, insectivorous and holozoic. So first we'll have a brief discussion about all the forms. The first one is parasitic mode of nutrition. What do you mean by parasites? Okay, let me tell you. So parasites are living organisms that totally depend on a host for its metabolism. So what do you mean by host then? Very good. Where they live. So parasites, it can remain inside the body or it can remain outside the body of a host. Say for example, there are certain parasites that will remain inside the body. Can you give examples, children? Very good. Tapeworm, roundworm. So all these parasites, they live within the host like human or animals. And they damage us. They take up all the nutrients from us and they damage us completely. Can you give examples of parasites that live outside the host? Very good. Ticks, mites, flea, even lice. Sometimes we scratch our head. What are those called? They are parasites. They live on the host and they damage the host completely, taking up all the nutrients. So based on that, we can classify parasites as ectoparasites and endoparasites. Ecto meaning outside the host and endo meaning inside the host. And the very important thing is parasites will derive nutrition from the host. The host can be a plant or an animal and damage the host completely. Okay. The second form of nutrition is saprophytic nutrition. What are saprophytes? So these living organisms, they grow on dead and decayed. What do you mean by dead and decayed, children? Saprophytes are living organisms that grow on dead and decayed matter. So what do you mean by dead and decayed matter? How do they live on dead and decayed? Okay, let me give an example. Just imagine you are eating something and you are leaving it and you have the remnants for a long time. You have the leftover for a long time. What will happen to the leftover, children? You can see certain colorful growths in it. What are those colorful growths? We see this in our everyday life. Even if you keep an apple for a long time without eating, you can find the apple, yes, they rot. So what you can see inside, what you can see outside, you can see some colorful growth over it. So what are those colorful growth called? Very good. They are called fungi. Even in coconut, our mother will prepare chutney and she will leave the coconut in the fridge for a long time. So what will happen when you leave that coconut for a long time? You can see some growth, you can see some slimy substances in the coconut. What is that? Those colorful structures are fungi. So fungi are saprophytic, which will grow on dead and decay. And a very important character of fungi is they undergo extracellular nutrition. What do you mean by extracellular nutrition or extracellular digestion? Usually the organism will take in food and they absorb nutrients, whereas these saprophytic mode of nutrition, they will produce an enzyme. They produce an enzyme. Those enzymes will act on the dead and decayed matter. They will break down the complex into simpler forms. Then that will be utilized by the organism. That is why you call that as extracellular digestion. So examples for saprophytic are fungi. And a very common example, mushroom. You can see mushroom growing on dead and decayed like bark of trees. Okay. And the third mode of nutrition is symbiotic association. This is also called as mutualism, which means here it involves two different partners They remain together and benefit each other. Examples, common example is lichens, which is a combination of algae and fungi. As you all know, plant is phototropic. So algae comes under phototropic, which has chlorophyll, so it can prepare food. Whereas fungi, they are heterotropic, which will totally rely on other for food. So these two will remain together and they benefit each other. So we have another example, like there are certain bacteria that lives in the root nodules. You could have seen groundnut plant. So groundnut plant, when you take the roots of groundnut plant, the roots will carry small structures like this. So you call these structures as nodules, and when you cut open this nodule and see under microscope, you can find certain bacteria living. So those bacterium will convert the complex form of nitrogen from the atmosphere into simpler forms so that the plant will utilize. In turn, the rhizobium takes up shelter from the plant. So these two are two different partners, but they live together in order to derive nutrition. Okay. And the fourth mode of nutrition is insectivorous. This is quite an interesting mode of nutrition. These insectivorous plants, they live in nitrogen deficient area. What do you mean by nitrogen deficient area, children? Yes, so it lives in an area where the nitrogen is available in very less or in a poor form. So as I already told you during photosynthesis process that plants require an important component called nitrogen in order to produce food. So these insectivorous plants are basically phototropic, which means it has chlorophyll, it can prepare its food, but in order to get the nitrogen, in order to fulfill the requirement of nitrogen, they feed on insects. Okay. Common examples of insectivorous are pitcher plant, sundew, Venus flytrap, Nepenthes. We have many examples like this. And the last mode is Holozoic. So Holozoic involves 5 major steps. So any organisms that undergoes all these 5 steps comes under Holozoic. The first step is ingestion. The second step is digestion. The third step is absorption. The fourth step is assimilation, and the final step is egestion. Say for example, how do we derive nutrition, children? We eat a food. So say for example, you eat something, so we eat a food. That eating up or the taking up of food is ingestion. So what happens to the food that we ingest? The food has to undergo a process of digestion. So the food has to get digested in our body. What is the third step? After digestion, the wanted material has to be absorbed. And the fourth step, the wanted material that is absorbed has to be transported to all the parts of the body, that is assimilation. And finally, the unwanted substance will be excreted out. So any living organisms that undergoes all these 5 steps, you call it as Holozoic mode of nutrition. So under heterotropic mode of nutrition, we are going to see Holozoic in detail. First, we'll go with nutrition in amoeba, then we'll go with nutrition in human. So, common examples of Holozoic is amoeba, human and all animals. So, based on that, you can classify Holozoic into 3, like herbivores, carnivores and omnivores. So, any organism that feeds on plant, you call it as herbivores. Any organism that feeds on animals or other flesh of an animal, you call it as carnivore. And any organism that feeds on both, you call it as omnivores. So all these 3 forms undergo Holozoic mode of nutrition. So any doubts, children? So small summarization of today's topic. So we started with heterotropic mode of nutrition. Under heterotropic, we have 5 forms: parasitic, saprophytic, symbiotic, insectivorous and holozoic. So parasitic, ecto and endoparasites. We also have certain plant parasites. So example, a common example is cascata, or this is commonly called as dodder or amerbel. So these are called plant parasites. I told you that parasites They live on other hosts and they take up the nutrition and damage completely. So these plant parasites will find a specific host and they take up nutrition from them through a specialized structure called hostoria. So hostoria or specialized structure in these plant parasites to take up nutrition and they damage the host completely. Say for example, you could have seen these plants, these custata during rainy season. Just imagine a host. You can see these thread-like structures growing inside, growing over it. Initially, you would have seen one or two. Later, you can find the parasites growing completely and they mask the plant completely. So they take up all the nutrients from it and they damage the host. So that Hostoria is a specialized structure in these parasites which will help in deriving the nutrition.